Hi everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Low-Code Café, episode 47. For those of you that are new to this event, know that it's something that we do every week. Most of the faces we see around every week, so it's a very addictive event where we present to our community new updates from the product, new techniques that we learn on our support channel from customers and how we address those challenges, but also give like a higher update of what's going on with us and our community. This event it's open for others to join. If you have interesting topics, please reach out to us to co-present in this event. And also we record this event and publish it on our YouTube channel. So we'll post the link in the chat in a bit. Make sure to visit it, subscribe to our YouTube channel, because what you'll see, it's a lot of hours of training content, basically. And Dale is doing a wonderful job at going through each of these videos and bookmarking various parts of it. So it's also easy to navigate and find the parts that are interesting to you. Cool. So today we have set our usual agenda. We'll start with some community updates, and after which we'll take it to there's an error there. We'll take it to Dale Warner, our head of product, to give us from the trenches some interesting stories that we learned on our support channel. And after that, we'll pass it to Reza, our head of product, to give us some news on the upcoming releases, but also give us, together with Andrei, give us the hands-on part of today, which the hands-on part is the biggest chunk of this webinar. And that's when we show how we actually use PlantaNet to build cool things. So there's a bit of news that I wanted to share with our community today, and that is we partner with Capterra. Capterra, for those of you that are not aware, it's like this review website. So we partner with them for our community. Anyone that writes a review for PlantaNet, actually the first 100 reviewers will get a $20 gift card. So that is something that also helps us grow, because many people buy the software by looking at reviews. So really appreciate it if you can give us a review, and there's also this gift card as a thank you for your time and effort of doing it. I will post the link in the chat in a few minutes, so you can find this page where to get started. So thanks a lot, much appreciated. And before passing it to Dale, there's some context I want to give about the main part of today hands-on part, and that is we have this problem because for us most of the sales happens through use cases. But we have this problem that on our website we have very few case studies here. And some of these are old, maybe they don't do us justice anymore. They are maybe over 1 year old. And some of the newer ones, the cool ones, are not here, because it's usually a big effort to do this kind of pages, interview customers, write the content, structure it, promote it. But it's what sells, right? So out of this, I think maybe 5 case studies, I will say maybe, because as I mentioned, some are very old and they don't represent us anymore. Out of these case studies, we actually have 30 or 40 more that are much cooler, that are big systems for bigger brands, with more relatable use cases like document management, compliance, and things like that. Those are the success stories that we want to tell to new leads. And those are the success stories that we also want to share with our partners, because a lot of the work that we do is through partners. So we need to put this kind of success stories in the hands of our partners, so they are able to present to their customers, to onboard their customers, to sell ideas, to sell solutions to their customers. So this is the challenge that we have. And of course, since we have this wonderful platform that we call PlantenApp, we use it to build a lot of our systems as well. What Reza and Andrei will show us today, it's the start of a sales ops system that we'll use to keep track of all these case studies and various aspects of sharing, permissions, various tracking the life cycle, tracking tasks that we do while working on these case studies to take them to completion. But also you should be aware that we probably have around 8 internal systems that are built with PlantenApp. Some of which like the community forum, it's built with PlantenApp. We have the help desk ticketing system is built with PlantenApp. The licensing system is built with PlantenApp. So these are like systems that you see, but there are also some systems that you don't see. Like we have a DevOps systems that builds PlantenApp. So PlantenApp is built by a system built with PlantenApp. So very, very cool and interesting. And when I sell to a technical team, to a developer team, that's what I say. We have built a CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous development, DevOps systems with PlantenApp, and they are like, wow, no, that can't be that flexible. Yes, PlantenApp, it's that powerful and flexible. Cool. So yeah, I'm very excited about this new system that Reza and Andrew are going to show to us today. But until we get there, I want to pass it to Dale Warner to give some time for Reza and Andrew to prepare. And Dale, our head of support, will give us the stories from the trenches.
All right, hello. Let's see if I can get the right screen this time. From the trenches, hello. So in the last development effort, in the current about to be released version 1.14 or 5.14 of the tools, there's been quite a bit of effort put into the date time picker. There was one particular case that came in through the help center, or one particular request that came in from 3 different sources on the help center, having to do with localization of the calendar. The flat picker, the date time picker, formatted to English, and people have different needs around the world. So one of the areas where we made changes is to allow flat picker options override. And this opens up since flat picker is the underlying tool, it opens up the tool to be customized in a broad variety of ways. And I'm just going to talk about a few of them today. We'll talk about localization to a different culture code, to disable dates, to add week numbers to the calendar, but there's a whole range of things, and I'll show you how to get into that. So jumping into it here, I have a page set up and nothing else. So I'm going to add an action form to my page, and we'll go ahead and configure it. So we'll manage the form. It's going to be a blank form, and I like to name things. So this is date time localization form, and I like to have labels on the top. But other than that, that's just a basic setup. And then I am going to add a date time picker to the layout. And this is I'm just going to call it default. I'm not going to pick anything else, just so we can examine how it comes in by default. And I'm going to size it down a little bit. And save. So when I go back, we now have a form. We have a default date time picker. When we select it, it has our months, our years. We can pick a date, and by default, the date comes up in a GMT style format. So let's say that again, the request was let's use the NL culture code for a date time picker. So I'm going to manage the form in a new tab. so that I can bop back and forth pretty quickly. And so I'm going to take a copy of this default one, and we'll call this the NL calendar. So the work that's necessary to do this, it's pretty simple, but there are 2 steps. I'm also going to need a static text field, and we'll show you why in just a second. So going back to my presentation, I have this on the presentation so that you can follow along my copy and pastes, but we need 2 things to make this NL setup. One is that we need this script, and so I'm going to copy and paste that, and I'll show you where to get these things. So in the static text, we're adding a script to load the flat pickers for NL, the flat picker JavaScript for NL. So just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to copy that URL out and paste it, and you can see that the JavaScript that gets loaded has shorthand dates and longhand dates. The months are listed, and like October is OKT. Different longhand dates as well. So this is the full setup for the NL culture code. So our script references that. That's going to be brought into our page. And then the next piece of the puzzle is that we have to tell the picker that we want it to use the NL code. So that's our static text. When we get into the NL calendar, there's a new section on the bottom here called Flat Picker Options Override. And the setup for that is this. We just say locale equals NL. Now, again, I'm going to show you where to get all this information in addition to just copy and pasting, but if you, we'll just demonstrate it first. So we've added locale NL and save. And so now when we refresh the screen, we have our additional calendar, NL calendar. And when we pick it, we see the month codes, the month names, the days of the week are different. And so we've customized that. Let's work with this layout just a little bit. Let's put these side by side, and then we'll do one more. We'll do the same thing, but do it for a Russian calendar. So I'm going to clone this field, and instead of it going to be the NL calendar, this will be the RU calendar. And while I'm thinking about it, I will put it in the layout where I want it, and then go back to editing it. So let's look at this flat picker options override. You can see in the help text that there is a link to the flat picker options. So I'm going to open that up, and this is showing all the different things, because this is the tool that we've incorporated into the product, flat picker. And so the things that you can do with it are described here. So I'll let you peruse that at your leisure, but there is a localization section, and localization in a browser environment, which is what we're doing. And there's an example here of Russian. So if this is the script, and this is the locale statement. So we'll do the same 2 things again. So we're going to copy the script and put it into our static text so that it's available to call. So we have the Russian. And then in our RU calendar, we are going to use locale RU as the selection. So we'll put that into the flat picker options, and it's there. So now it's RU, and that's it. We'll save that, refresh. And so now we have the default calendar that has the months this way, NL calendar that has it that way, and the Russian calendar that didn't work. There it goes. So I had to refresh the screen again. So we have the Russian calendar and the days across here. So that covers localization, and that closes out 3 tickets on my help center. So that certainly makes me happy. There's some other customizations that you can do. And before I go on, I just wanted to mention, I brought up this, like this NL JavaScript, and it has the definition of the JavaScript for a language that are predetermined. So within our list here for localization, there's dozens of locales are available. And so if you're looking for a particular one, here's the list of the locales. And so Italian, Japanese, French, it's all in there. So you can pick the ones that you need. And if you're handy with JavaScript, I suspect you could write your own JavaScript, even hosting it locally, that would allow you to customize this to your needs. So that's localization. But there are other things that you can do with the calendar, and I'm going to cover those while we're here. So there is the ability to disable dates. And so if we were to look at our default calendar and look at this, there is all manner of dates that you can pick. If we use this syntax, and this is described in this document that we've linked to, but if we use this syntax to disable June 10th and 11th, we simply paste that, and we'll go to our default calendar, and in our customizations, we'll paste that, and that has to be in this format. So we're telling it that we're defining our dates as year, month, day, so that way we can enter them in the way that we want to. So we're disabling June 10th and 11th, and so we'll save that, refresh. And so now when we pick this calendar, notice that the 10th and 11th are disabled. This calendar, these calendars unimpacted by that change because it's in the definition of the calendar. So that's disabling dates, particular dates, and you can list as many as you need there. Another customization that's pretty cool is to be able to add week numbers. So if you were to, again, go to our default calendar and change the format here, I'll put a comma and add this week numbers selection, week numbers true. And you can just stack as many of these as you need into that definition, just comma separated. We refresh it here, and now we have week numbers down the left. We still also have our disabled dates. So that's a quick look at some of those. And then there's one more that I'll pop in that's kind of fun. If you wanted to disable a date range, for example, we're going to disable from May 10th to the 21st, June 21st to the 25th. Just pull out two ranges from your calendar to disable. We can come into our default calendar, and this time I'm just going to completely overwrite this and just paste in this code to disable those two ranges, so that when we refresh, look at the calendar, we can see that we've got a hole there. The 21st to the 25th isn't showing. If we go back to May, we see the 10th to the 21st isn't showing. So there's just a whole range of things that you can do with that option. We've just opened it up to you to work with and linked to the document. So that is localization and other flat picker options. And just a quick one, I guess, the client formats, if you want, we'll copy this one out just as an example. When we pick something off of here, we get this complex format, the year, month, day, hour, minute, second format. And if we wanted a different format, we go to our default calendar and look at the client format. You can modify what the format looks like, the way the date is displayed. And these are, the definition of these are found in the date time picker format strings and the time picker format strings. So you can link over there and see how to build these, but I'll just give a quick demonstration of one. If we refresh here and then pick a date off the calendar, we can see we have now a more client-friendly June 10th at 12 p.m. kind of a date. Okay, so that is from the trenches, clearing 3 tickets, and I'm going to let Reza next talk about product roadmaps and then dive into the definition, the discussion about our eating our own dog food in the client portal.
Thank you, Dale.
Absolutely.
Hey, everyone. So yeah, excited to show you what we're cooking, what dog food we're cooking. And before we jump in there, just a quick update on release 114. We were planning to release it today. A lot of you probably saw the notifications that went out that we were upgrading dnnsf.updateQueryStringParam as well as the console. Those, because they're kind of mission critical and client facing, we always give the 48-hour notice on those, and just so you know that there's going to be a maintenance window. We uncovered a couple of small things in the migration from when you upgrade from 113 to 114, and just, you know, that's why we do it. We let it bake for a week. And kind of eat our own dog food first. I guess that's the theme of today. And so want to make sure that, you know, whatever we give you all is always top quality and is only going to make your life better. So in the spirit of that, we're going to let it, we're going to have to try again and kind of continue letting things bake. I think it's all good and everything's fine. It was a very small issue and we've corrected it and upgraded some other sites and everything's fine, but never want to rush anything out and compromise quality. So probably looking at another week out tops. Like I said, we're done. It's just baking, but I don't want to rush it out there to you all. So it's a great release and everything's ready to go. I showed it a couple of weeks ago. Dale just showed what I think is a totally killer feature. And I don't know if you mentioned it in there, but you can actually use tokens within that JSON. So you can get some very custom things. And as you're playing in there, there's some neat examples where you can switch it into a mode where the date picker is like a date range. So if you were booking like a hotel or a flight or something, and Airbnb, some of the cooler sites, instead of having a start date and an end date, you just click on a date. And as you move your mouse, it starts highlighting other dates. And it's saying from January 5th to January 8th, right? So you can flip it into that mode very, very easily. It's one line, and you'll get that. But let's say you had a situation where you have people trying to book an appointment for something, and you only want to allow them to pick available dates. So you can use the tokens to disable dates, or even with this range picker, you can say dynamically what date ranges are allowed to be picked. And in their example page that we've got linked in the bottom under the control where you put that in, it's got some really cool examples. So I'd encourage you to kind of play with those and check them out and get your juices going. I had a ton of ideas, especially when you factor in being able to put tokens into place. And in 115, we're working on having the ability to execute a workflow as a token. So you'd be able to have the workflow calculate, figure out the dates, the blackout dates, whatever, and you would just use that token in line in this JSON. It would run the workflow, get your dates, feed it into the flat picker, and have the blackouts for you dynamically. So as people are booking things and taking things out of circulation, available dates, your form will always reflect that. And kind of an interesting, we've got a customer that's doing this, and I know Patrick is working with them on this, but the only caveat I would say if you're doing those date ranges is that the way things are wired up is that's, especially if you have a date field as part of an entity, like you've probably called it, it's expecting a single date. So when you use this range picker, it's going to change the text kind of what's returned back to the field to say, you know, from January 1st to January 5th, you would need to take a second action and parse out, use regex or JavaScript or anything, and pull out the beginning and end date, and then feed those into your start and end dates of your form. So maybe one we can do in the future. It'd probably be a very small example, but I think it unlocks a lot of capability and stuff. So this is all part of the work we're doing to make the date picker a joy to work with. And there's several items in 15. We're going to keep going on it every release and just keep making it better and just kind of automatic, right? You can always go out of the box and do some really cool configuration and customization, but we want it just out of the box. Everything is really straightforward and understandable. So we've had about 4 or 5 features and fixes put into 14. There will be another set coming in 15. So it's kind of stay tuned, and I think we're really raising the bar on what can be done with date time and true date times and things like that. So with that said, I should have Andrei Nemes on with me, I think. Yep. Andrei, can you share your hop on screen with me? There we go. Our deal was, so Andrei is really awesome. He's part of our delivery team, builds a lot of really cool stuff really fast. And he had kind of started this one off. And when we decided we wanted to show it, I wanted to have him kind of ride along with me, and we'll take a look at where things are. Let me just kind of hop in here.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Reza.
Hey, Andrei. Don't be camera shy.
No.
All right. So before I show it, I want to kind of just set the stage for what are we solving for here? And as Bogdan mentioned, we have some case studies in here right now, and they look great, but they're very manual to put in. It's kind of not programmatic, right? We create a page and we maybe clone one of the existing ones and then go and start uploading assets, replacing the images. What do we want to put here for what the challenge was, what the solution was? There's some screenshots that go in, and then there's kind of results. What was the delivery time? How many people did it take? And so this is time consuming and can render non-consistent results. And another very interesting scenario is not all case studies or clients are created equal, right? Some people say, love you all, but we want to keep our kimono closed, right? And maybe not for various reasons share what we're doing, or sometimes it's bureaucracy and you've got to jump through legal and a lot of hoops to get permission. And so we didn't just want can we reference you and do a case study on you and share it? It's even more nuanced than that. And there are times where they say, hey, I don't mind if you talk about my use case, but I don't want you to show my logo, right? Or I don't want you to describe the pain point I'm having or something, and kind of maybe show that my business was vulnerable or struggling or having issues, right? So we said, okay, we want to, make this systematic and programmatic. As Bogdan mentioned, we've got a ton of great stuff already, and every day new stuff being built, whether we're doing proof of concepts. Some of these proof of concepts are really great examples of advanced functionality that the world never gets to see. It was something that was shown in a sales demo once or something. For whatever reason, they weren't ready, they didn't buy it, but we have this, and it can show what can be done in a space. So the next time someone has a similar challenge, we'd love to be able to talk about this use case, what we were solving there, and show it. Now, maybe the company that we did the proof of concept for doesn't want that revealed, right? So that's where we get into, okay, we need to still want to share this and show the fundamental problem space that we're solving, but we want to keep some things closer to our vest. And so enter our solution here. And what this, basically is doing, and this is an overall internal sales portal. There's a lot of cool features and things we're bringing online with this. But the part we're focused on today, and I want to show today, is basically what we've got as a repository where we can put in these case studies and granularly control what level of visibility we want to give kind of behind the curtain and reveal about that case study, whether it be internally. Just for us, we can see everything. We have something to reference and go look at. Hey, I know we had an app where we did something like that once. let me find it because I can use that technique over here. A lot of these also are going to be great for as we bring on the ability to import templates, and some of these will turn into starter apps that we'll be able to share out. So just having an inventory of them and knowing what they did is setting the stage for that marketplace and us to be able to start sharing some of this great stuff out as well. But lastly, there's times where maybe someone's okay with us privately, we're in discussions with someone and they don't mind if we're one-on-one talking about their case study, right? And then there's just ones where it's like, hey, put this on your website, let the world know I want it known, right? And so this kind of gives us a mix, an ability to manage that. It's got kind of a couple of cool features that I want to touch on today. One, it's got these neat flip cards. And you might remember these from Low Code Café 23. And Elena was showing us where we had taken a really neat example we found online and ported that into a layout, a template for the grids. And so I was able to take that and use what she did here in this video and kind of put my own spin on it and recreate that technique here. So, you know, having just the world's longest list, and there's a lot of data that goes into this entity, kind of made it hard to show things. And then having just the kind of traditional cards, just wanted something fun. And ultimately this was so that once we come out of stealth mode with this and expose these on our website, the plantonapp.com, probably an interface very similar to this will be facing out for people to make things easy to find. You can search by a customer. So we're in there also. And these are ones that we've kind of done as demo apps or internal things like that, like the Academy is here. But we also have the ability to search by things like industry or a domain. This is compliance, HR, legal type use case. There's also the concept of, have we published this? Putting these together takes some thought and some work and rounding up of assets and things. So we might be kind of in a draft type state for a while. And so being able to click on is published and just quickly seeing what are the ones that are done and ready to go. One of the things I do want to show today, Andrei did a really neat job with how he's wired this up. You'll notice this doesn't really look like the grid that you are used to. There's not the regular search functionality is not there, the little filter icon, that stuff's been hidden. There's not a header to the table, and we've pulled in a form that is letting us kind of dynamically on the fly target and filter down the results, and it stacks those. So I want to take a look at how he did it and talk about a challenge I have for him on how we take this up a notch. You'll also see that there's kind of made use of the tiles and dashboards. Personally, I can't get enough of these. I want to see us have these be able to have actions and be clickable in the near future. So you can define things like, hey, well, let me go ahead and apply a filter. We've got 23 of these in here now. There have been 12 added this week. We have a couple of data points, and we'll take a look at adding. But one of the things we're capturing is what was the team size? Like how many people did it take to build this particular item that's in the case study? And then there's a time, how long did it take them? And so, you know, when you have a bunch of entries, 23 of these, it was kind of neat for me to put this on here. And on average, our builds, things that we've done or that we're showcasing, were done by about 2 people and took about 226 hours worth of build. Now that sounds like a lot of time, right? But you're talking about a month and a half of man hours, human hours. However, there's some concepts in here. We'll probably start pulling those into some of the filters and things of very high complex ones, things that we have worked on for months and are very, very mature and enterprise grade. Those obviously take more time and keep, you know, an app, as long as it's alive, is always changing, right? Otherwise, it's probably not alive anymore once something becomes stagnant. And so the hours kind of accumulate, but we could, you know, do some other polls. Maybe someone says, hey, show me what could be done in about 40 hours or less, you know? And so we have the data points to start targeting in and get these cases together. One of the other things that's really neat here, and we'll take a look at how it's done, if I, any search that I've done, not only does it filter down my listing, however, there's a generate PDF button. And this is the starts to us kind of pulling together a listing. So PDF was just created, and you'll see that it only has pulled the 3 items that I was showing here on the screen. So for now, it's a listing mode, and it's as we're going through to start implementing these micro permissions is what I want to maybe call this concept, where we can get very granular with what we're exposing. Wanted a way just to kind of, hey, what have I got here? Here's a list. There can be links in PDFs. So I don't want to give 20 pages of case studies to someone. Maybe I want a header page, or I want them to read a little bit about one and find it interesting and click on that without even having to go to the website. So that's kind of, I think, the spirit behind this generate PDF, and kind of what's special about this, because this is a lot of stuff. You all have access to these capabilities as well. I think what's special about this whole scenario here is that we are using a form to dynamically filter down a listing and through the SQL of the data source. You'll notice that there is the technique, and we've shown it in other low-code cafes, where when you have a listing, you can tie it to the URL, the parameters. And that's how a listing normally works. If we maybe run over here to just a random generic kind of one. Of course, we don't have filter on this one. So, but when you normally see the little filter icon and push it, it'll turn any of the columns that you have set are filterable. They become drop downs, and then you can filter. But that's all happening client side, right? So when you have very large sets of data, that technique really breaks down, because it's got to on the client's machine, on your browser, it's going to look at every single piece of data that's listed there, and not using database queries, but using code on the client machine, try to limit that list down. So when you start stacking these, it can take a long time to reload the page. And I'm talking maybe when you have 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 entries and pages of entries, using the kind of built-in on-the-fly filtering that's working, and it's injecting up into the query string the values and then refreshing itself, can take a very long time to render back the page to the user. So a case where I am stacking my criteria in real time, if there was a lot of these, and when there are a lot of these, it could take a lot of time to refresh that. So I really like this technique that he's got here, and we'll jump in and see how he's done it, because it was a little bit, I've done things like this, but it was very elegant the way that he's implemented this. Andrei, help me out here. What have we, let's take a look maybe at the form, and we'll take a look at one that's already been filled out, and you can kind of walk us through what is the data. There's a lot of data here. What does this data kind of do? Some of it's kind of the basics, right? We've got a title and a customer, but I noticed that as I start typing, I'm getting a list of customers. So where is this list coming from?
So this list is coming through an API from our internal console, where we are keeping our customers and the subscriptions that we have. If you are going to see in the form, we are using a text box that has the autocomplete URL section, where you can simply just put the API URL there, and that's how it works. It's
okay,
just very simple, and in the back of the API is just another SQL that brings all the data with the name of the customer and the ID that is in the back.
Excellent. And so, this is a good chance maybe to call out, sorry, let me get oriented to my my screen here. Let's run to configuration. So, as you know that you every time you create an entity, you are getting free API calls to retrieve the information. And so we have a different internal portal, the console that you all know, and that's where we know who our customers are in an entity. And so we're able to do a little bit of adjustment. Whenever you're using these entities internally inside your application, they're fine. All the security, everything is very tight. You might need to loosen things up a little bit if you want to expose it to a different app or site. And so that's probably what we've done, is not turn the security off, but we're passing some things around so that we can make sure that we should be being talked to, and it's allowed to reveal this list to a different application.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one mentioned why I chose to do it this way is because I consider that I don't want to create another entity called customers and to import and export every customer that we have here. I chose to do it in a simpler way, just to get all the data from the other platform and get it here.
Yeah, excellent point. And you don't get into having to keep things in sync in multiple places. You can feel comfortable and safe knowing that not just this name, but this ID becomes universal across applications, and
yes, exactly,
fetch and pull information together from various sources, whether it be workflows, APIs, whatever. So then it looks like we've got some industries. So we're kind of, going back to what we were looking at on the homepage here. This is all just kind of HTML, right? And moving to have the ability so we can start filtering and targeting. We've added some fields in here. So some of this is about the case study itself. What domain is it applied to? What industry? Tell me about this stage.
This stage represents exactly where the case study or the project is in that time at. I mean, if it's in production, if it's only a plan or idea or a POC that's in developing, or it's kind of showing the status of it.
Mm-hmm. So maybe we can add an entry in here in the future that's for like a starter solution or something like that. Do a case study on it, but have it be part of our inventory, and then make those solutions available for people to read the case study, look at it, understand, there's a complexity level, which is really handy, right? So you might say, hey, this looks really cool, but it takes a lot of time to build, or it's very, very complex. Maybe not the one I'm looking for. Hey, here's one that's low complexity and is doing something or is similar to what I want to do. I can take those up. So by not just having these be text-based and kind of breaking out and categorizing our case studies, we get a lot of not just searching ability, but ability to target certain ones. These start being able to have more use than just being out there for case study purposes, right?
Yeah, exactly. And all of these drop downs are like an open door because there are entities in the back, and we always can put there in more data and add more categories or another industry, another domain.
Excellent. So then we have some links and things. We have the ability to talk about the pain points, the problem that we were tackling, the solution. There was some testimonials, we can put them in, relate them to any case studies, add videos, really get all the information that we could possibly have. We don't have to take everything, but anything we have, we can build up and then dynamically use the things we have. So you won't get big gaps, where, oh, there's a problem because there's not a video link here, right? We could just say, hey, there's no video, so don't offer to link to a video, things like that. So you can get a lot more programmatic and controlled in what you're showing. We've got the ability to add some screenshots with a multi-file upload, and then the logo for it, right? And so kind of want to jump under the hood here. You guys kind of have an idea of what's going on, but there's a couple of parts that I've teased out that I want to show here. One is if we go to, for example, let's say the Academy should be fine. There's these, actually, maybe that's a new one that hasn't been put in yet. Well, I tell you what, so let's let's look at it. That one was 5. It's a great thing that we can show here in a second. Let's take a look at like, I know I had one I did here, this demo. So this is one I did a while back called Earn Logic. It's an ROI calculator, but we've got this asset permissions. And you can see, and this is those micro permissions I was talking about. So we have things like the logo, the testimonial, a one-pager, a success story, title, summary, the website, and these are set to private right now. And I'm looking here, and what I have the ability to do is I can set things to granularly to public, or I have a workflow that was created. And this workflow, oops, you can see it's making use of our namespaces now. That is coming out in 14. And so this workflow basically takes in a couple of things. One, what's the ID of the case study, and what permission level do you want to assign, right? And so then it goes and it fetches up. Well, what it does first is it says, if I'm running this either for the first time or I want to sync up, go ahead and get rid of any entries that are in there, clears them all out. Then we load up an entity, kind of dual use the word entity. This is like a contextual entity. Think of it as a temporary data set, right? So we can use a SQL query and load into that. We call that asset types here. So it's for each one of the asset types. And that was like what we were looking at there, the logo, the title, that sort of thing. I now have all of the possible asset types. And then I'm just executing an action on this list. I'm looping over them and this calling a create new asset. And I'm taking the permission that was passed in, the ID of the asset type, logo, title that I'm looping on, and the case study in question. And once those are done, we just mark that it was successful if we got to this far. And I've shown this technique in the past. I can start out and say, hey, the result I've initialized. I hit step 1 of my workflow. If I run into errors in any of these actions down here, I can set my result to error and put a description or something if I want. But if I make it to the last step, I want the last step to be that my result was successful. And then that's ultimately what this returns back, right? You can use that then in this case, I'm using it in the form. And this was in the form, this functionality. I was able to export the actions out of the form and import them right into the workflow. So this took 2 minutes to set up. Why I pulled it into a workflow was, you know, we're building, and this is still in its early stages here. It's come online very quickly, but I realized that people at the time, when you create a new case study, there is this asset default permission, and it kind of sets those up. Well, this wasn't, it was empty, didn't have a default value. So people were kind of getting started and filling it out and not picking something here. So now we've solved that, and it's a required field, and it kind of defaults. You can pick anything you want, but it makes sure it's there. And that's what we saw when I was looking at that, the one that was for the, I think the Academy here. When I looked at its permissions, there are none, right? And so why workflows also are handy. I can't go back now and create a whole new entry for this thing. I can either come and add these in one by hand. There's like 12 of them, right? Or I can simply run this workflow. And since this is our low-code academy, I can say it's public. It ran. I refresh. And now I have the permissions. Now, if there was something in here that I wanted to come and say, you know what, I don't want to show the success story for whatever reason, right? I can granularly control the levels of these, but I want them in there by default. And this is kind of an important pattern that I run into when your apps start getting kind of level 2 worth of complexity, right? Which is, I've got, if you remember the hackathon judging app, it had a similar pattern where for every team and each judge, there was criteria that the judges had to judge a team on. And so I didn't want the judges to go and add the criteria one by one during the hackathon. I wanted them to see a list of things they need to judge already, much like what you're seeing here, right? There are a set of things that need permissions that we know about in the system, and I need to have their permissions preset. I could have even had them not preset, but I at least wanted these entries in here. And so how this was done, apologies. If you look at the case study entity, and this was kind of interesting how Andrei did this. There's only one list of entities here. And that's how normally you would connect to things like that, is using the list of entities. Now we have a list of images here for the screenshots, but I noticed the assets weren't in here. But then how are they there? And what I noticed was that, and I would have, just personal preference, everyone has their own style. I would have personally thought to have made a list of entities. Now those can be a little bit funny to work with because it's a third table where there's a connection being made. But what I noticed that Andrei did here was he's got an asset table and he's putting the one entity, the case study, is associated with an asset type. So that was the list of, it's just a drop-down list of, is this a title, a logo, a success story, whatever, my quote, my company name. And then the permission, is it shareable or not? Are we allowed to share this or not? And those things are needing to be there. I was just wondering, Andrei, this was an interesting way to go about this. And when I did that workflow, it was, I felt like really easy to work with it that way. So one, we can see that you can come at this from either angle. And I was wondering, why did you go this way instead of a list of entities on the case? Is it just dealer's choice, or did you find this to be simpler to work with?
I think it was more simpler to work with because I actually created the relationship table through the case study and the asset types. That's how I actually kind of see it, because as you can see, when you are relating an asset type to a case study, we also have the third column that is called the shareable, which is the permission.
Mm-hmm.
And if I did it only as a list of entities, I wouldn't have that third column, because a relationship table only contains the case study ID and the asset ID. And that's why I chose it this way, because I can save here more data.
So if we look at like this case study image project screenshots, right? You don't see that in the list of entities or in the entity listing over here on the side, right? That gets created for you. Think of it as a reference table or a link table, that's sometimes called, where all I'm holding is two IDs, right? And so what Andrei is saying is that's fine when I just want to associate some screenshots, and I'm saying I've got an image ID that's in your files table, and I have a case study ID. And because I said list of entities, it creates that for you. And when I put an entry in, I get these two IDs. But we needed a third thing. I needed to know something else about this combo, which was the permission. And so I think what we found here is that when you have very simple, I just want to put files or roles or just a list of people, whatever, right? And I want to connect those up, multiples of them, list of entities is a great way to go. When you have a need to know a little more about that relationship, decorate this relationship, I still know that I have an asset ID, I have a case study ID, but in this case, I wanted a third piece of information. And so the idea here then is that it's totally okay. Don't get hung up that list of entities is the only way you can do this. You can just create another entity and put the ID as an entity type, property type, for the things that you want to relate. And then you can come and decorate up any additional pieces of information that you want to know about a thing. So very handy technique here. With the limited time that we have left, I did want to, let's kind of spend it. I want to take a look at how you did this filtering form. So we'll look at, do you think it better to look at the form first or to look at the listing first?
Yeah, sure. I would start with the form because that's where the things.
So we added, this is not an out-of-the-box form. We added an additional form to this page. And essentially, you can kind of just see how it's laid out. It's got a little label for the search by. It's got the customer, the industry, the domain. And I added this today myself that is published just because this was such an easy pattern to work with. So I see that there's some binds on here. What's going on with these?
Yes, exactly. Okay, so what am I really doing here is just a simple jQuery that updates the URL with the customer ID that I'm bringing from the API, and I'm sending it in the URL. So I can sync the SQL from the listing with what I'm sending in the URL.
And so that's what all of these have on them then, is that we're just taking, you'll notice there's no buttons on this form other than the clear button, right? Which just probably clears out what's in the URL
Yes.
on the bind as well.
Yeah, also it clears the fields and the URL.
So we clear out our fields and then we clear out the URL. That gives us a show me everything, right? So that's all these are doing. Even this is published one. It's a Boolean field, right? Unlike the others. But at the end of the day, we have this really neat kind of dnnsf. It's a library that's available to you. We've talked about these in past episodes. It does a lot of neat things. And one of the commands that you have at your disposal is update query string parameter. You say which parameter, that's the first thing you pass into it,
Yeah.
and then what's the value you want, right? And in this case, I picked the is published. So basically what's happening
is basically the key and the value.
So you'll notice my query string up here. So I've got an I equals 8. That's for industry. I could have said industry, right? We just kept it simple here. Now it's adding, it's stacking this on, and you know the domain is HR, and I could say is published is 1. So you see, there's nothing that came back. I clear it out, everything comes back. Now let's see how he's leveraging this. And if we go to the listing. So and the neat thing here is that we're pointed right to the entity for case studies. We didn't have to write a SQL statement to pull this in. Tell me about what this is here, this customer. So my where clause is saying where customer equals, then you've got a case statement here. What is this doing?
Yes. So we had a simple where clause here. And yes, we could also use it without the case when, but I used the case when here because if you are only going to filter it when you are clicking something, if you don't have the case when, then if you don't have anything selected in the form, in the filter, then no data should be brought to you in the listing. That's why I use this case when there, because if my customer query string parameter is empty, then I will bring the customer there, so I can show you every case study to all the customers.
Okay, so in SQL then what it is that in a case statement, you can say when I have a match of it's almost like an if, right? When yes. when I have a match of the case, the scenario, where industry, and this is that, just parameterized down here to prevent the SQL injection and stuff, right? So this secures when you use these binding tokens. And we're saying when it's equal to nothing, whether it's customer, industry, or whatever, go ahead and just then customer. So we're saying customer equals, and it uses the value of what's in customer, right? So it's almost like it's not doing a where, but it is. We had to have something that could handle when it's empty. The easy one, and that's what I like about this technique, it's easy to do this when you say, oh, where it's equal to, industry is education. But when it's equal to nothing, right, now I would get nothing back because I have education and IT in different industries listed. So what this is doing is kind of letting you bow out of filtering gracefully. If I don't have a value, just go ahead and assume that I want to show what's there. If I did specify a value for my where clause, then go ahead and use that. Then you just end these, and we did some ands, right? Now, maybe setting the stage for a future one as we're kind of out of time here. Oh, and so then that you're just refreshing, I guess, the listing then, right? And that just makes it use its where clause. So
yes, I'm using the sync with URL checkbox, which is in the general settings from the listing. That should be checked in order to sync with the URL.
Okay, so that's what causes it to look at the URL, and and I didn't know this, that it will actually sync your SQL data source itself, not just the front end on the fly, on demand kind of filtering where it's got to repaint the screen and everything. And so you can see where if you have a lot of data and you use this technique, because you're pulling less records back to begin with, the filtering happens really fast. And SQL database, SQL Server is always going to be better at querying data than any kind of client-side or front-end technology, right? And you're not putting the burden on the user's machine. I've literally seen where fast computers will do things fast. Like as a developer, I built something, it's very fast. Then my users go, that screen is so slow. And I realize they're on older machines than I am. So this is a great way to work around that and to not have to create a bunch of logic to, well, if there isn't a value and stuff. So on the lookout for maybe if we show this again as we kind of keep going with it, didn't get to it today, but want to show you how we use these granular permissions to dynamically build out a case study. And the other challenge I had for Andrei is, what if I want to select multiple items here? If I wanted to say, hey, show me anything you have for education or government or healthcare, and I want any of those three to come in. And so my challenge for him is allow me to pick more than one thing at a time and keep getting this great lightning fast benefit of filtering. So in a future episode, we'll see how we solve those two challenges.
Great challenge.
And I just want to mention too that the techniques that you showed today, when we post this video to YouTube, will include those in the notes or the comments so that they're available to grab and use.
Yeah, and maybe a shout out to the Low Code Cafe 23 where these cards came in. And we can also go ahead and package up and make available you'll just have a folder that you drop into one of the folders where these templates are held, and you'll have this available. You'll pick it and your stuff will look like this. It's pretty neat. So very easy to get going, and we'll share that out as well.
Great.
Great.
All right.
Cool. Very, very cool. I love it. There was 23 use cases that we have. And I think this is maybe only half of all the use cases that we've been involved with. And I think if we check with our partners, we'll find maybe 100 more different use cases that we can document. So this is just the beginning of a great sales tool that we'll use internally and we'll expose with our partners. So I think very wonderful to see it, Reza and Andrei. Thanks for sharing. For those of you that want to talk more about this, hang out, ask for opinion, Dale also runs this event on Fridays, the Low Code Campfire. So make sure to check it out as well. And otherwise, we'll be seeing you next week, same day, same hour. Bye, everyone.